Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling a massive persistent problem. It's kind of hiding in plain sight. E-waste, electronic waste. Every year, as we buy more phones, computers, all these smart gadgets, the pile of old electronics just grows and grows exponentially, really.
Yeah.
Globally, the numbers are just dizzying, and the environmental impact, the toxic potential, it's profound. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, it's definitely dark side of all this digital progress we love, right?
Yeah.
The electronics industry, it's now the world's largest and fastest growing manufacturing sector, period.
Biggest and fastest growing. Wow.
Exactly. And that rapid growth, it means e-waste has become the world's fastest growing domestic waste stream. Full stop.
Right.
I mean, to put a number on it, just in 2021, the planet generated something like 52.2 million tons of this stuff. It's a huge logistical nightmare.
52 million tons. That is absolutely massive. But look, instead of trying to analyze the whole world today, we're doing something more focused,
Right.
highly targeted deep dive. We're looking at a case study that actually offers some unique policy lessons, I think. It's based on a primary survey focused entirely on attitudes, behavior, and, crucially, willingness to recycle e-waste among 351 consumers in Brunei Darussalam.
Ah, Brunei. Yeah, focusing on Brunei is really useful because it sort of acts as a policy laboratory.
How so?
Well, the average person there generates a pretty significant amount of e-waste, about 18 kilograms a year. That's like 1.5 kilos per person every month.
Okay, that's quite a bit.
It is. But here's the key difference. Unlike a lot of established economies, the country currently lacks specific, centralized laws for managing hazardous waste.
Ah, okay.
So that means understanding what consumers know, what they think, what they intend to do. That's absolutely critical if you want to define future policy. It's a great place to sort of test the public will before the infrastructure is fully mandated.
That makes perfect sense,
Right.
right? So let's start with usage, just to get a sense of the scale of consumption there. The survey pretty much confirms what you'd expect in a connected society. Almost 90%, 89.9% of respondents use a mobile phone daily. And nearly as many, 86.6%, use a computer every day. So high usage, probably a high replacement cycle, equals high waste potential.
Yes, exactly. High potential. But here's where the insight really starts.
Yeah.
You contrast that almost universal consumption with the knowledge base.
Okay.
The study found that only 57.3% of respondents actually understood the formal definition of e-waste.
Only 57%. So almost half the people using these things daily don't really know what e-waste even means.
Pretty much. They're highly engaged consumers, digitally speaking, but they don't fully grasp the end-of-life aspect of what they're buying and using.
So the issue isn't just consumption, it's cognizance. Like you said, they're digital natives, but maybe not quite environmental natives when it comes to their devices.
Precisely. And that lack of understanding, it leads directly to that crucial moment of failure, the point where the system breaks down, which is when people decide what to do with that old phone, that dead laptop, the replaced device.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I thought, because we move from just knowing things or not knowing things to actual physical behavior.
Yeah.
What happens when the device finally gives up the ghost?
Right.
They don't trash it, apparently, and they don't recycle it. A huge majority, 67.4% of respondents, admitted they just store their old devices and appliances somewhere in the house after getting a new one.
Wow.
Yeah. We are talking about the vast majority of consumers basically creating this massive national digital junk drawer.
And that drawer is full of, latent public health risk. It's not just clutter.
No. And the primary reason they gave for this huge stockpiling, cited by 58.1%, is brutally simple. They just do not know what to do with it.
58%. Just confusion.
Yeah. It points to a profound failure of communication, maybe infrastructure, maybe both.
Definitely both. And look, e-waste isn't just bulky garbage, right?
Yeah.
It's complex stuff. It contains highly toxic materials, lead, cadmium, mercury, those flame retardants.
Right, nasty stuff.
Very nasty. And if those devices are just left to degrade in a dusty corner, the risk of improper disposal later on, or worse, hazardous materials leaching out right there in the home environment, it's very real.
So the biggest barrier isn't really malice or even necessarily apathy towards the environment, perhaps. It sounds like it's genuine confusion and a total lack of convenient, trusted options.
That seems to be a huge part of it.
People maybe don't want to pollute, but they also just don't know the proper off-ramp for this kind of specialized trash.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, We need to dig into the psychological reasons, the logistical reasons why people don't move from that storage behavior to actual recycling.
Okay.
Because even if the government, say, instantly build 100 recycling centers tomorrow, the study suggests people still might not use them, not without addressing two key psychological hurdles.
That's a great point. And the study did detail two main things holding people back beyond just infrastructure. Number one, and this is huge today, data privacy. People worry, understandably, about personal information left on their old devices. They don't trust some unknown collection system to securely wipe their data.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the second factor is much more emotional. Sentimental value. These devices aren't just tools anymore, are they? They're repositories of our lives.
Yeah.
Memories, photos, videos. People are genuinely reluctant to let go of that digital memory bank.
It makes the device feel more like an heirloom than just trash. We've all got that old phone or maybe an iPod tucked away somewhere, right? That feeling is real.
Absolutely.
But these psychological barriers, privacy concerns, sentimentality, they must be massively amplified by the complete breakdown in just knowing what to do logistically.
Yeah.
What did the study find about where people actually can go if they overcome those feelings?
Well, that's the thing. The primary concern the study identified wasn't necessarily the existence of collection points, maybe, but the absolute lack of knowledge about them.
Okay.
Get this. Only 19.1% of respondents knew of any places to recycle e-waste, generally speaking.
Yeah.
19%.
Wow, less than 1 in 5.
Yeah. And here's the kicker. Only 13.4% were aware of the specific government drop-off point, the one run by Gesture, that's the Department of Environment, Parks, and Recreation at Sungai Akar.
13% knew about the official government spot. That is a staggering awareness gap.
It really is.
You simply cannot participate in a system you don't know exists, especially, like you said, when you layer on that fear about your private data possibly being at risk if you use it.
Exactly.
This suggests that the current system, whatever its actual capacity, is functionally invisible to, 87% of the population?
Yeah, pretty much. The government could hypothetically have the best processing plant in Southeast Asia. But if only 1 in 8 people knows where it is or how to use it, it might as well not exist from a public participation standpoint.
Okay, so let's pivot now. We've identified the problems, the knowledge gap, the stockpiling, the privacy fears, the invisibility of options. Let's explore the potential solutions. Because despite all that, the study actually found that consumers show a pretty remarkable willingness to participate if those facilities were made accessible and, crucially, trustworthy. They aren't resistant to the idea of recycling itself.
And that willingness, that's what makes this research so potentially powerful for policymakers. Because we can actually quantify the public's sort of investment readiness.
How so?
Well, around 66%, 2/3 of respondents indicated they are willing to pay a disposal or recycling fee.
They're willing to pay.
Yes. Somewhere between 1 and 10 Brunei dollars. BND, that's the local currency.
$1 to $10. Okay, that willingness to pay is potentially a game changer, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If 2/3 of people are willing to chip in a small fee, that could fundamentally alter the funding structure needed, especially for private sector solutions.
Exactly. It shifts the conversation, maybe, from needing a massive government subsidy for everything to potentially creating a viable fee-for-service business model. And it's not just money they're willing to contribute. They're also willing to invest some time and effort. The study found that 38% are willing to travel between 1 and 5 kilometers for a disposal or recycling center.
Okay, 1 to 5 kilometers, that's pretty specific.
It is. And in a modern economy, knowing that 1 to 5 kilometer willingness radius, well, that tells you almost exactly where collection centers need to be situated to maximize consumer uptake. It gives you a map, essentially.
Right, make it convenient within that radius. Given that willingness to pay and travel, I found this next data point fascinating. When the public was asked about the government's financial role overall, 0.76% of respondents still agreed that the government should subsidize e-waste disposal generally. And 76.9% agreed disposal should be subsidized, very similar numbers.
That is interesting. So they're willing to pay a fee themselves, but they also want government subsidies.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, it suggests the public views e-waste management less as just a simple consumer choice, maybe, and more as a necessary national public service, something that needs government underwriting.
To guarantee it works properly. Or maybe ensure security.
Perhaps both, especially given the data privacy concerns. Maybe they want the government to ensure the system is trustworthy, safe, and reliable, even if they contribute a bit financially themselves. They want oversight.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like an investment in the system's legitimacy. Okay, so if they want government oversight but are willing to pay, who do they actually trust to run the system day to day?
Well, the results there were overwhelmingly skewed towards, let's say, commercial efficiency.
Really?
Yeah. When asked about potential agencies for managing e-waste, a huge majority, 82.6%, chose the private sector.
82%, way ahead of other options.
Way ahead. Government agencies came next, and then community initiatives were far behind.
Wow. Okay, that is a clear mandate for some kind of private-public partnership then.
It seems like it. The public is basically saying, look, we'll pay a bit, we'll travel a bit, and we want the government to set the rules, maybe provide some subsidy, ensure safety. But we think the private sector has the logistical capacity and efficiency to actually manage the collection and processing.
Okay. So if the government facilitates, sets standards, and the private sector manages the operations, how do you actually get people to change that digital junk drawer behavior? How should awareness campaigns be structured?
Right, the communication piece.
The public had a clear opinion here, too. The most preferred way to promote e-waste management, according to 33.5%, was through awareness campaigns directed specifically at civil servants.
Interesting. Not the general public first.
Not as the top choice, no.
Yeah.
Civil servants first. That was followed pretty closely by imposing regulatory fines at 26.4%.
So it seems the public is looking for accountability, kind of from the top down.
Looks like it.
Directing campaigns at civil servants first suggests a belief, maybe, that if the institutional players, government offices, large organizations are held accountable and visibly lead by example, then the rest of the public will follow suit.
And the support for fines just reinforces that idea that policy needs regulatory teeth. It shouldn't just be, an optional feel-good activity. It needs to be formalized.
Exactly. It needs to be serious.
Okay, so if we try to synthesize the main findings from this whole deep dive, thinking about Brunei, but also lessons for elsewhere, what are the, say, 3 most critical takeaways?
Okay, 3 takeaways. Number 1, e-waste management is fundamentally held back by inadequate infrastructure. That's basic. But it's massively compounded by a substantial lack of public knowledge about the few facilities that do exist. The system is effectively invisible to most people.
Right. Invisible infrastructure. Number 2.
Laws are critical. The absence of specific hazardous waste legislation creates this vacuum that confusion and, well, hoarding tends to fill. And importantly, the public sees the private sector, not the government, as the most effective entity to manage the actual logistics and day-to-day operations.
Okay. Laws and trust in the private sector for operations. And number 3.
Number 3, it's a regional accessibility issue. If you're relying on the private sector and people are only willing to travel 1 to 5 kilometers, then there's a critical need to build more decentralized collection points or businesses. You can't just have one central hub, especially outside the main Brunei Mora district in this case.
Spread it out.
Yeah, spread it out.
Yeah.
Ultimately, success is going to hinge on incorporating the obligations and actions of all the stakeholders, the producers who make the stuff, the government setting rules, and the residents who use and discard it. And this study confirms residents' environmental awareness and attitude do significantly influence their recycling behavior if the system allows them to act on it.
So to summarize the key insight that really struck me from the survey, the gap isn't really about apathy or people actively wanting to harm the environment. It seems to boil down to accessibility and information. If the majority of people are hoarding potentially toxic materials in their homes simply because they say, I don't know what to do with it, well, that's fundamentally a policy and infrastructure problem. And it seems to need an immediate, efficient, probably private sector-led solution for collection and processing.
Yeah, that sums it up well. So what does this all mean for the future of waste management, not just in Brunei, but potentially elsewhere?
What's the final thought?
Well, the study has uncovered these really clear underlying factors, the privacy fears, the sentimentality, but also the willingness to pay, the willingness to travel. These are concrete incentives and barriers. They can be used right now to boost consumer participation in e-waste collection if you design the system correctly.
Yeah.
So the challenge isn't just disposing of hazardous material safely. It's about finding ways to actually leverage that existing willingness of consumers, their money, their time, to formally operationalize what we often call the circular economy.
Bring theory into practice?
Exactly. You have the consumer desire, latent perhaps, but it's there. The desire to do the right thing seems present. So the very next step has to be building that decentralized, accessible, and crucially trustworthy system that actually honors that desire, that meets people where they are.